Hello everybody. In this video I wanted to show all of my greatest hits albums that I have on CD. Now what I'm going to be doing with this one, I'm going to be splitting it into, it's probably going to be two parts. Maybe three, I don't know, or maybe just two. Because I have quite a lot of greatest hits albums and I don't really want the video to be too long, so this is going to be a two-part video. So this is part one. So yeah, basically just greatest hits compilations of so I'm not going to be including the various artist compilations, they're all compilations of one artist. So, Beatles compilations, Queen compilations, Rolling Stone, that kind of thing. So yeah, so the first one I have here, this is the Beatles 1. So this is all their number one singles. And yeah, I think this needs no introduction. I think everybody knows this compilation. It's one of the biggest selling compilations of the 21st century. And yeah, I mean, I don't really need it because I have all the albums, and I have the Past Masters compilation as well, which is, Past Masters is basically all of their singles and the B-sides that were not included on the albums. My opinion on greatest hits compilations is that I think they do serve their purpose. I mean, if I've got all the albums of an artist, then I don't really need a greatest hits. But I'll buy a greatest hits album if it has any singles that are not on the album, then I'll get it for that reason. But there are some artists where the greatest hits are all I need. And of course, the Beatles isn't one of them. As you know, I have all their albums, and I love them because I love them that much. I have this for nostalgia reasons, because this was what got me into the Beatles. So, I just love the artwork on there as well, the pictures. Yeah, it's just, it means quite a lot to me. And next I have a few Rolling Stones ones. So this one's called Flowers. This came out in 1967, I believe. I mean, it's not strictly a greatest hits. I mean, there's a few hits on here, like Ruby Tuesday, Have You Seen Your Mother Baby Standing in the Shadows, Let's Spend the Night Together, Mother's Little Helper, Out of Time, I suppose you could say, is a hit as well. It's quite a well-known song. But there's a few deep album cuts on here as well, like Backstreet Girl, Please Go Home. And it's got a few rarity tracks on here as well, like Ride On Baby, Sitting on a Fence, which I love Sitting on a Fence, actually. I can't believe it was one of those. I can't believe it never made it onto an album or a single. But yeah, it's a good compilation. It's worth it just to get those rare tracks that you can't find elsewhere. I just love that artwork as well. And yeah, you see Brian Jones. He's the only one who doesn't have any petals on his flower, and apparently that was a prank that Mick and Keith pulled on him. Yeah, nice artwork that. And I've got some more Stones ones. This one's Hot Rocks, 1964 to 1971. And yeah, I think pretty much every Rolling Stones fan owns this. It's a double album, of course. So yeah, pretty good way to get into the Stones. And then there's the second volume. This one's called More Hot Rocks, Big Hits and Phased Cookies. I just love the trippy artwork on here. Apparently that photo is it's an outtake photo from the Between the Buttons photo sessions for that album cover. And yeah, they did this to it. And yeah, this one's not quite as much of a greatest hits. But the first volume is strictly greatest hits. There's a lot of hits on here. This is like leftover hits that were not included on the first one. And there's some album cuts on here as well. Some songs that you could only get on the EPs. Like, they released a couple of EPs in the UK. And yes, this contains EP tracks that you can't find anywhere else. So yes, yeah, I do like this a lot. This was a double album, of course, as well. And the last Rolling Stones one, this is probably the best one to get if you want to get all them singles that were not on the albums. This would be the best one to get. This is the singles collection, the London Years. It's a three disc set. This one's in the digipack form. Personally, I would have preferred to get a dual case version of this, but this was all I could come across. So yeah, we've got all the single covers on there. So yeah, it's all the singles they released in the UK and all the ones they released in the States as well. So yeah, this is, and if you're one of those people who, if you just want a concise collection of the Rolling Stones output rather than getting all the albums, I'd say, well, either get the 2 Hot Rocks albums or get this. You know, you get a lot of material on here. So yeah, you get a lot of non-album singles, a lot of non-album B-sides on here. It's just a brilliant package. I love it. And next one, this is one I've showed before because I did my Queen collection video recently. So yeah, this one's Queen, the Platinum Collection. So this has all of their greatest hits albums that they put out. So this has the 3 volumes. Of course, they came out separately originally, but then they released them in this set. Yeah, I won't talk too much about this one because obviously I've shown it in a different video. But yeah, it's a really nice set. And I've got a couple by The Who. So this one is The Who Then and Now. So this came out 2004. So this was their for their 40th anniversary. So it contains pretty much all of their big hits up to that point, and it has a couple of new tracks for this release as well, which is Real Good Looking Boy and Old Red Wine. I like Old Red Wine actually. They wrote that song as a tribute to John Entwistle, who he passed away in 2002. So yeah, it's a good song. I think this is the only place you can get that song. I don't actually think you can find it elsewhere. So yeah, so that makes this CD quite worthwhile. I mean, everything else on here, you all know. I mean, I have quite a lot of the albums by The Who, and The Who, they're one of those bands where I will want to complete the album collection eventually. I mean, they have 12 studio albums. I have the first 6 albums. So I'm halfway there, so I just need to get the other 6, and then I'm complete on them. But yeah, I love The Who. They're just a great band. You can't deny them. They're just superb. And this is a better compilation, The Who Hits 50. This was released in 2014 on their 50th anniversary, and this is 2 CD set. And yeah, this has a lot of their non-album singles on it. Of course, they were, they're a British band back in the 60s, and for some reason, a lot of British bands in the 1960s, they would release singles, but they wouldn't include those singles on the albums. It's the same with the Beatles and the Stones and the Kinks as well. They all did it. I mean, American groups like the Beach Boys and the Doors, the Monkees, they included the singles on their albums. That's because they had different policies. It's kind of mad when you think about it now, because when artists, well, ever since the 1970s, when artists would release singles, they're pretty much always on the albums. I mean, yeah, there's still a few artists in the 70s and even the 80s that released a few non-album singles, but only just a few. But back in the 60s, there was these artists that had loads of singles that were not included on albums. I mean, it seems mad now, doesn't it? But yeah, this is a really good set. I like that picture with Roger and Pete. Yeah, 'cause it's only 2 members now, and I think this has a new song on it. Yeah, Be Lucky, which is the new song for this release. And yeah, it's only got Pete and Roger on there. So we've got one by Pink Floyd. This one's Relics. This is from 1971. So this mainly has a lot of the singles from the Syd Barrett era. So yeah, it's got Arnold Lane, CMLE Play, which you know, this, because Pink Floyd are a band where I think I probably will want to get all the albums, but this has a lot of the non. I mean, in the 70s, all of their singles ended up on the albums anyway, but on some of the early albums that they put out in the 60s, they had a few singles that were not on the albums. So Arnold Lane wasn't on an album, See Emily Play wasn't on an album, Paintbox wasn't on an album, Julia Dream wasn't on an album, Careful with That Axe Eugene wasn't on an album. I mean, the live version did appear on the Ummagumma album, but the studio version was only available as a single. And Biding My Time, I think that was actually a new track at the time of this release. It hadn't been released up until this compilation was released. It's got a couple of album tracks. It's got Bike, which was on Piper of the Gates of Dawn. So there's a few album tracks. Remember a Day, the Nile Song, which I think is from the More soundtrack. But yeah, this is a really nice compilation. I do like this cover, but I prefer the original cover, which had the drawing by Nick Mason. It's actually Nick Mason's birthday today. He's 79 today, so happy birthday, Nick Mason, if you're watching this. He's probably not, but anyway, I want to wish him a happy birthday. And I've got a couple by The Monkees. This is The Monkees 20 Greatest Hits. And yeah, there's a couple of non-album singles on here, like D.W. Washburn and It's Nice to Be With You. A Little Bit Me, Little Bit You. Don't think that was on an album. And I think The Girl I Knew Somewhere. Yeah, that wasn't on an album. So yeah, there's quite a few non-album tracks on here. Yeah. I do love the Monkees, and I do have some of their albums, and I do eventually want to get all the albums, but some of them are actually really hard to find. Yeah, especially like the 60s ones. Like I saw a copy of the Instant Replay album on Amazon, and they wanted a ridiculous amount for it. I'm like, no fucking way. So yeah, I'm probably gonna wait for the Monkees. I mean, I've got the original album series CD box set, which has their first 5 studio albums, so I'm happy with that. But eventually I will try and get the rest of their catalogue. This is a good compilation. This was how I got into the Monkees, actually, the definitive Monkees. So we get 29 tracks on there. So yeah, this is a really good compilation. Probably a good way to start if you want to get into the Monkees. That's probably the best way to go. And I have a few by David Bowie. This is called Space Oddity, and this has all the really early David Bowie, so some of his 60s singles, and it has some tracks from his first album as well. And it also has a demo version of Space Oddity, which is really good. And I think this is an unauthorized release. I don't think this was released officially, but yeah, it's a good CD. And I've got the Bowie singles collection. Yeah, there's a few non-album singles on here, like Alabama Song, which is it's a cover song, but yeah, it wasn't actually on any of his studio albums. And songs like This Is Not America, Dancing in the Street with Mick Jagger, Absolute Beginners, you know, John I'm Only Dancing, you know, some of these songs, I think those songs weren't on albums. But yeah, it's a good compilation. Probably a good place to start if you want to get into David Bowie. I've got another Bowie compilation, Nothing Has Changed. And yeah, I bought this just after David Bowie passed away. This was the first David Bowie CD that I got. I played this to death because, you know, I didn't really start to get into David Bowie until after when he was alive, I loved some of his songs, but I didn't start to become a fan until after he passed away. And this was the first CD of Bowie that I bought, And yeah, I played this a lot at that time. But I have quite a lot of his albums now, so I don't really listen to the greatest hits much. I prefer just listening to the full albums. But yeah, this has a couple of new, well, it's got one new track, Sue, or In a Season of Crime, which is the final track on disc 2. This was, I think this was exclusive to this release. I believe there's a 3-disc version of this as well, but I'm happy with this. Like I say, with David Bowie, I'm more for the albums. Well, I think I'll end it here, because there's still quite a lot to show, a lot. So I'll end it here, and then I will be back with part 2 very shortly. So I will see you then.